right, and I see another question here. What are some qualities that I should really practice to be an effective BDR? All right. So for me, the qualities that I say that you really need to practice is one, basically the sales cycle, right? Is research. How can you research things critically? How can you think? How could you ask yourself the right questions so that you could seek out the right answers, right? So if there's, for example, you would be surprised how much things you could find out from Facebook, how many things you could find out from social media platforms in regards to a business, who BP, which is a buyer persona. You could find a lot of things through social media and the internet. So you want to make sure that as you're doing research, that you're thinking critically and you're thinking outside of the box in regards to getting the information that you need in the research stages. So that's one way I would think about it is just think critically, be curious. That is actually one of the great qualities of being an effective BDR is being curious. That's the word right there. So if you're researching, be curious. Even in your outreach, be creative. You want to be creative in your outreach. Sometimes sending out an email is great. You want to be creative on how you send out the email. Maybe you want to include a video in that email. Maybe you want to kind of say something that's a little bit more tailor made to that specific BP. Again, buyer persona. That's a person that is the one that is basically going to possibly be the one to buy from you or has a buying power within that company or that transaction. You want to kind of be creative on how you approach that. So let me kind of put these two C's here. We have curious, as I knocked my microphone. We have curious and we have creative. So you want to be curious, you want to be creative. And in regards to the last portion, which is discovery, as you being curious, you want to be curious in that discovery as well. And you also want to be calculative. You want to be calculative. Is that the right word? If I said it wrong, you can correct me in the comments. I'm trying to have a alliteration here. C, C, and C. So you want to be curious. You want to be calculative. There we go. You want to be because the reason why I'm saying that is because as you're curious, um, you want to be able to ask the right questions, right? These discovery questions are to dig deep and find out what are the pain points, what are the problems that this particular practice has. And so, well, for me, for my case, practice, but also in your case, it might be this business, right? This particular business, what are the problems that this business has? And so you want to take the time to ask questions that are deeper, not closed questions, but open questions. You want to take time to ask questions like, so, you're telling me that X, Y, and Z is happening at your business. What is the ramifications of that? Or tell me more about that situation. Or how is that affecting your other staff members? Like questions that would basically prompt whoever you're speaking to give you more than a yes or no. Those are the type of questions that you want to kind of be starting with. What we learn is spin, situation, problem, implication, and need payoff. These are the type of questions that really you want to get. So you want to be curious, you want to be creative, you want to be calculative, and of course, the biggest one is you want to be confident. If you're not confident throughout it all, then nobody's going to want to have a conversation with somebody who's not confident, especially something where their job could be on the line. And you have to think about it that way, that these people, when they speak to you, if they decide to go forward with whatever thing that you bring in, and let's say it does not work or just falls through, that's their job on the line. So they are very protective of that. They're very protective of their company, and you have to show yourself as an ally, as a friend, as a human being, and the confidence that you have when you talk to them about your product and having the product knowledge goes a far way. So again, I'm going to say it again for those in the back. To be an effective BDR, you want to be curious, you want to be creative, you want to be calculative, you want to be confident. I'll just say those four C's makes a great BDR. Now, how did you practice selling? Okay, so I practice selling. I think the question is, how did I practice selling for the interview? Because sometimes when you do the interview, you actually have to sell in that interview, especially if it's an SDR, BDR role. They'll say, sell something. And that's exactly how I sold it. I sold it with confidence. I was creative. In fact, I'll give you the exact scenario for me. What happened was I was asked in the middle of the interview, sell me something. And to be honest with you, I was slightly unprepared for this. However, I did have some sales background working in the solar industry. And so I basically decided to approach it the similar way. And I said, okay. And we were having a discussion virtually via Zoom. And so I said, oh, well, have you ever heard of this product called Zoom? And the person said, yeah, I did, with a smile on their face. And I said, well, when was the last time that you actually spoke to a family member and you had problems communicating for whatever reason? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And they kind of told me what it was. And I said, well, how did that feel that, you were able to see them or whatever the case may be? Like, oh, I felt terrible. We were talking on the phone, we had bad connection and so on and so forth. And I said, what if I could tell you about a product that could allow you to see the person that you're talking to and be able to have interaction with them on a greater level? Wouldn't that be something that you'd be interested in? And yeah, now that was a very simple way of doing it. That was a very concise way. That's not a real world scenario, because there's gonna be a lot more questions, a lot more of issues or combatants. But the whole idea was that you understood situation, problem, implication, and need payoff. If you want to find out more about that, you got to read the books Spin Selling by Neil Rackman, and also get into Course Careers, because they break that down really well. But that's the way of formulating a question. So practicing doing that is really through repetition. Getting with a group of other people that are SDRs or BDRs in training, or even having a family member that is basically say, hey, play hardball with me. I'm going to try to sell you this phone, or I'm going to try to sell you this computer, and I'm going to ask you these questions: situation, problem, and implication, and need payoff questions. And I want you to respond to me. Let me know, what it is that I need to, how I could sell you, how I could do better, and just kind of have people that could basically you could bounce off of. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but you basically want to have people that you could bounce these things off of and have repetition, and practice. I realized that in solar, I've been doing that for a couple of years, and based off my estimations, I did over close to maybe 8 to 10,000 transactions where I'm basically talking to people, and not all of them went through. About 6,500 of them possibly went through. But then there's so many different things that happen in the back end. Anyway, long story. All I'm saying is I had a lot of practice in solar sales, so that's what made me comfortable in talking to people. So you need to practice more to get comfortable talking to people. All right, so that was a bit of a tangent that I went on there, but hopefully you can find some good nuggets in what I said.